All right, let's talk about tonight. Who's going to play and who isn't? Do you have any idea?
No, I mean they've kept it quiet. I mean, my assumption would be the 20 odd players who didn't practice on Tuesday ahead of the joint practice are probably the ones, and that's all the names you would think of, the veteran names. So I'm going to guess most of them know. I mean, in terms of like the quarterback, they to a degree combine the playing time in the joint practice and the game. Jaden Daniels and Marcus Mariota played a lot in that practice. So I think, that's a way of probably saying, hey, they put in their work. They won't be here. The only thought would be it's the only home preseason game. Do you throw the fans a bone and just tell Jaden, all you're doing is handing off the bill 3 times and we're calling it a day, but or whoever's back there. But yeah, other than that, I would not imagine we're going to see too many of those people. Now, I think we would see, say, Sonny Styles, right? I mean, because he's a rookie and the first steps, and there'll be other players like I would imagine, like say, like a Johnny Newton. I could kind of imagine Brandon Coleman and Chris Paul being out there, right? I mean, to get some work together, whatever. But in general, I wouldn't imagine we're going to have too many of the starters out there.
Do you think they should be out there?
This is such a fascinating topic.
It's a topic every year, but I'm asking it more so because you've got 2 new coordinators. You've got a lot of new players on one side of the ball, but you've got 2 coordinators who have never done it before, and they're going to do it, for 60 minutes tonight. I'm not saying because the starters aren't out there, they're not going to call plays. Of course they are, but wouldn't it be nice to get into, a little bit of rhythm with the players that are going to be with you on September 13th in Philadelphia?
I mean, 100%. It sounds perfectly reasonable and logical. And then, oh, by the way, sometimes players get hurt. Oh, yeah, right. Good point. We're not going to do that. So, right. I mean, yes, logically, of course. I mean, it makes all the sense in the world. I mean, you hope that whatever they're doing in practice in this regard is helping along that way as well. I do think there's a difference between practice mode and game mode. In practice mode, you can flub the whole signal call and it doesn't matter per se, right? In the game mode, you're getting a penalty or, you're going to cause confusion or, cost your team in some way. So I'm with you. I do think this is important for the 2 new coordinators to get a feel on game day. How is it actually going to function? It would be better if the main guys were out there. But like I said, I just don't, just based on the way it goes. Now, I will just say this, like let's say they do that, they're very conservative. I do think then in the next game, they need to be out there a little bit. I mean, I don't know what some teams do that. Some teams put their guys out there and other teams are like, nah, we're good. We'll see you in September. I don't know what exactly is the right way, but for this group, after the way last year went, it does feel like, hey, why don't we get out there and be competitive? Like Dan Quinn has said, he wants a competitive camp. Well, preseason essentially is part of the camp, right? So be competitive, get your guys out there. And, I'm not saying they need to be out there for too long, but get out there a little bit. I think that would be helpful because, they're not going to play in the third one. So, if they sit tonight, okay, but then got to play somewhere would be my view.
All right. Ben on his Substack this morning wrote about the players to watch, jobs, roles, things to prove tonight. I would urge all of you to subscribe to Ben's Substack. You can get a link to it at his X account at Ben Standig. It's totally worth it. Is the 20% discount still available or not?
It is not.
Okay.
If you email me here,
sorry for asking.
On this, no, sorry. If you email me on the side, say Kevin Sheehan sent me, I'll see what I can do for you.
There you go. Okay. Well, just go to his X account and send him a DM. Is that okay? Because I don't want to give out your email address.
My email address is on the X account bio, so you can find it there.
All right. Very good. So what are you going to be watching for tonight?
Yeah, I mean, I do think the whoever is in there, the execution, is there false starts on the offense. Doesn't appear to be any kind of confusion. Some of the basic nuts and bolts type deals. I mean, look, I think if Sonny Styles does play, let's see it. I mean, I didn't include him in the story that I just wrote, but let's see, him get out there. And, again, if a lot of the other guys are not around, then, he'll be the one of the main guys for sure. So see how he works. And obviously, I don't know what Miami's deal is if Devin Achane is out there at all. Maybe he won't be. He's obviously one of the more electric running backs in the league, so that would be a test for linebackers in general. In terms of some guys I mentioned in my story, it is kind of wild. It shows that how many other players they brought in that are interesting that you have a better feel probably than I do because you take calls and people email you all the time about who they're thinking about. I probably had almost nobody asked me about Johnny Newton. This guy was he was a 36th player in the pick in the draft 2 years ago, and he has not been able to, get a high rotation spot. It's not like he's been bad. It's just they haven't been, he just hasn't elevated up there. I did talk to him the other day after the practice, and I said, tell me how it's going. And he said, hey, I think this has been a great camp. I think I had a great OTA. I feel as good as I've ever been. And I don't take it as like, well, this is, of course, what's he going to say. I don't think he's that kind of a guy. So I do think it's interesting to see. This will be, if there's no pain and there's no Kinlaw, and I don't think Tim Settle's going to play because he missed the joint practice with a calf strain, I was told. So, yeah, I think seeing a guy like Johnny Newton perform will be interesting. On the offensive side, I'm really curious to see a guy like Katron Allen, the 6th-round running back, because, if I say he's had a quiet camp, running backs are always a bit tricky anyway. And it's more, if it is going to be a running back, it's going to be somebody like Bill, who's like, quick and shifty. But if you're a power guy running between the tackles and there's no tackling, it's kind of hard to demonstrate exactly what you have. This is obviously a full-blown football game, so let's see what he can do, because if he's able to show that he can contribute to, these short yardage situations or between the tackles and so on, then, maybe now all of a sudden we're like, okay, there's a piece of the running back pie for Bill, a piece for Rachaad White, and now this kid's going to get in there. If not, then maybe it's Jeremy McNichols if they keep 4 or what have you. So I think those guys. And then, look, it's one thing to make your kicks in practice. Do you do it when the game is on? And I'm assuming hopefully they get a few opportunities to kick field goals. This is like the one time you're like, okay, maybe it's okay to stall in the red zone if we're talking about Callie McManus or Sam Hartman, and let the kickers get some shots. So just Drew Stevens able to go out there and make the kicks. And if he can, especially if there's anything from distance, I think that would go a long way towards him, further widening the gap with Jake Moody, if not, getting harder to beat him. Although, again, they both went 6 for 6 in the last practice. So Moody bounced back, but Stevens has looked the more impressive so far.
Yeah, you've said that the ball kind of comes off his foot differently than it does with Jake Moody's. I made the point to you the other day. Dustin Hopkins, the way the ball came off his foot, they always told us was really, really impressive, explosive. The ball got up quickly, they would say. Where is Dustin Hopkins kicking? Is he still in the league? He's got to be, right? Somewhere? Is it Cleveland?
That was going to be my guess, but if you guys move around so much, looks like he is not on a team at this moment.
No, he's not on a team right now.
Yeah, well,
where did he kick last year? He kicked in Cleveland in 2023 and was released last summer by the Browns and hasn't kicked since.
I guess he didn't. Yeah, okay. Yeah, he didn't kick last year. In my head, it always feels like guys like him and Graham Gano were making 55-yarders every game, and we're like, hey, Washington can't find a kicker. But, yeah.
Graham Gano's still kicking right with the Giants, or is he somewhere? Where?
No, I think you're right. I mean, last I had heard. I mean, he's been lights out for them, but typically.
I know. As long as he's been healthy, because he's been injured a bunch.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, like I said, I mean, to see Stevens get out there and make the kicks, for fun, make some from distance. I just think it goes a long way. And whatever we're going to see on TV, and it's obviously if we're looking at it from behind him, you can't quite see what I'm talking about. But in terms of the speed, but the angle of the kick at a minimum, if it sort of goes, up but straight versus like an arc, I think that's kind of what I'm talking about. It just flies through the air, and that's why he's able to have more distance, where Moody is more of a traditional, arc of it, which is fine, but then that loses some steam at the end.
All right. I wanted to finish up with this, and that is Coulson Yankoff. You've talked about him. You've written about him. There have been a lot of people who have spent some time out there over the last week to 10 days that keep bringing his name up. Denton said to me yesterday on the show, I said, give me the player that, has impressed you from sort of back of the pack, Yankoff. What is it that everybody likes about Yankoff?
Well, at a base level, like I said, he really has just been catching kind of everything that's getting thrown his way. So that stands out, of course. And, I don't know how much people can capture this watching him, but, his level of athleticism is, pretty impressive. Not only because of the fact that he played quarterback, running back, and receiver in college, and now he's a tight end. So to be able to do all those things is something, but also he's 6'4", 225, but is still one of the faster guys on the team. And so can you figure out a way to put that athleticism on the field? Now, the issue to a degree is that because he's only 225, blocking is not going to be his strength. He is pretty good at special teams, and that's, maybe his entree onto the roster. And then can you do more from there? To a degree, we're probably overhyping him because, I don't know, how, even if he makes the team, how much is he really going to play, assuming that Chigakonko, John Bates, and Ben Sinnott are good to go. But I'm just always intrigued by this type of project, a guy who's his position is more or less athlete. How do you figure out how to use him? And, it's looking like he's a guy that, hey, you can actually get the ball to down the field. You can, throw it to him when he's reliable. And obviously those are, fun things to see.
I mean, do you have any sort of clue as to how they would use him if they did use him? Because the athleticism, the athlete, he's not a pure tight end. He's probably more of a receiver than he is a tight end. But we haven't included him in our receiver conversations. So let's just say that they have to keep him on the roster, and they see a way for him to contribute. How would it be?
Yeah, so when I talked to him the other day, we're talking about Wes Welker and about the fact that, I know some people said to me, wait, why would you have a former receiver coach the tight ends? And obviously they were in a little bit of a pickle because of what happened with the previous tight end coach. But from a receiving standpoint, a lot of the routes that you're running as a tight end, if you're not in line, if you're from the slot, is exactly what Wes Welker was doing with the Patriots. And Yankoff talked about how Welker has been a real wealth of knowledge for him. And so that's kind of what I would imagine, just a guy who would be, somewhere in the slot, more or less, and it's I don't want to, I'm not comparing him to Travis Kelce, the player, don't get me wrong. But when you watch Travis Kelce, he's not really playing a traditional tight end. He is more lining up as a slot receiver often and going in that route. So I think it would be like that. Again, especially in the world now where Stephon Diggs exists. So they have two receivers that they can have out there at all times. I think all the other potential experiments, take a little bit of a back seat, and he would be one of those. But that's how I would think they would look to use him. And especially, if Chigakonko missed time for whatever the reason, then that's where maybe Yankoff gets a larger role and they really show what they can do with him.
All right. Enjoy tonight as much as you can. Fingers crossed nobody gets hurt. And it would be nice, I think, to see Jaden in the game with David Blau calling the plays just to see how that works. I will talk to you later. Thank you.
Of course, man. See you.
That was, of course, our Washington football Commanders insider, Ben Standig.